Hey, peace world. Thanks for pressing play on another Pay Me No Mind sports and entertainment video. Get into some bite down boxing, a couple of topics to talk through. Dan Rafael uh, ends, his tenure at ESPN. I see Andy Ruiz and Reynoso, Canelo's trainer. There's a chance that after this COVID situation that those two could that Ruiz could basically join like the Canelo camp or the Reynoso camp. Then some new news on Wilder with a bicep tear, a left bicep tear, and surgery that he had, and then just a lot of noise swirling around DeontayWilder and the potential, the trilogy fight tentatively scheduled for early October. I want to say October the 3rd. First with Rayfield. Um, this had been announced a while ago, I believe. There was talks of it, 4, 5, 6 months ago. I guess that his contract wouldn't be renewed. I don't know. I see some people celebrating this, clapping it for the applauding this, and rejoicing and so on and so forth. Um, just because Ray Field is out doesn't make other people good at what they do or how they do this job that they've kind of created for themselves or they think that they're doing. Doesn't it really? I don't know what his situation has to do with many of the other people out here who are now, like I said, uh, celebrating this man, no longer being with ESPN. I don't even think some people even factor in, you know, what the factors behind the decision. Is it his salary? Like he just costs too much to be retained by them and where they're going in the future. I just had in my personal life, I just had some changes with my job. There was some employment moves made and whatnot. And so to be kind of insensitive to what's going on with this guy, because if you've clicked on some of his stuff, you've reported. Some people have used him as their primary source so that they could talk about what they want to talk about on their platforms. So I don't know how you get too mad at the guy. And like I said, and now I've said this before, I don't know how many individuals would really do better in his position. Like random person wouldn't bring their own bullshit to how they cover boxing, the same way that he brings his own thing. But I've been in a number of on a number of conference calls with Dan in some post fight press conferences and whatnot. All in all, asking his question and doing his job and filing his stories, he did his job. One thing he did post a tweet about it, and he just said, it's the fighters, the fans, and so many others in the boxing in the business that make boxing the greatest sport in the world to cover. I'm extremely grateful to everyone who has read my work over the past 20 years, participated in my chats, or just stopped me to say hello and always give their opinion or to take a photo while I've been covering fights. The one thing that I would just say about that is like he has, even when I was like really really green, and I find myself sitting a row or two away from him and just said hello. Just the guy was very guarded, very defensive, and really wasn't that friendly. But I had to understand that again, he's one person in front of 500 to 1.5 million people and whatnot. Everybody has their opinions and want to shower him with what they disagree with or their opinion and whatnot, and that has to be an interesting position to find oneself in. I don't think he really I don't think he did well in distinguishing friend from foe, or not even a friend, but I would just just be like, I asked him who I was walking out at Jared Hurd and Williams last year, and I asked him what he thought about the fight. He did have Jared Hurd winning the fight. I didn't even get nasty about it. I just said, "Oh," and he just was all standoffish about it. And it was like, "Well, damn, bro, I'm trying to, kind of understand, I'm trying to walk a mile in your shoes as we're walking to our vehicles." And it's like, you're just a pretty bitter dude. But you got to understand that about it. So, we'll see where he pops up at in the future. Reynoso and Andy Ruiz Jr. Andy Ruiz and Teddy Atlas, in my opinion, I don't know. I didn't think that was gonna be or would be anything that would work too well. It wasn't a good choice. I think conversely, Eddie Reynoso, and being around the Canelo and seeing how he goes about his business and that peer pressure that might come out of that camaraderie and working alongside him, I think it's an obvious fit. I mean, the Mexican, everybody being Mexican, I believe Ruiz speaks Spanish and whatnot. So, that should be a done deal. Not much to discuss, and as long as he's willing to accept whatever Reynoso's expectations are, that should be the move. Nothing much to go into there. So there's an update out there on boxing scene with Wilder that he underwent a procedure to repair something with his left bicep, saying that he tore it in his last fight. He appeared on the PBC podcast. I haven't listened to this one yet. I'm really not. I'll be honest with you. I'm not a big fan of. I'm not a big fan of the DeontayWilder performance. When he's performing, and I think he's gotten so big over the last 18 months and whatnot that oftentimes he does like to hear himself talk. So. I'm not saying on a personal level. Again, when he gets into that performance stuff and trying to sell himself and sell his fights and whatnot, really not my favorite stuff to listen to be honest. So I'm going to try to get around to checking this thing out. But he was very vague in very vague-ish about this procedure. And then we know he supposedly went to Africa right after the after the fight. So I don't know. I've mentioned this before. Boxing is a different animal in that there's no, the medical situation. Who knows what's true because of HIPAA and whatnot. And they're not in a league. So nothing really has to be divulged or disclosed or put out there to the public. So I don't know, but I think early in the article and I'm gonna listen to this on my own, but to say that the former WBC heavyweight champion didn't specify when he had the surgery, but he noted that he'll be able to work out and spar by the end of May. I mean, I gotta take him at his word if that's what he says, but to not have any details. But like I said, it's not like there's a beat writer, or ESPN guy that's in LA or Tuscaloosa monitoring everything and has connection, is working people at the hospital and chasing down these types of details. So whatever fighters share medically is what we have to roll with. We'll see. The interesting thing is that if something was torn, would you have taken a trip? I just had a call that kind of messed up my train of thought. Oh, but then he exercised the clause for the rematch within a week. So the timing is just a little funny to me. But did he get something cleaned up? Maybe. I don't know. So we'll see. But the other noise out there is, AJ. It's just like now it's like F with Deontay Day. But AJ comes out and says that Fury annihilated Wilder and exposed him as appearing. That's the thing right now, with nobody able to fight, everybody is just talking. And nobody has to back anything up. Nobody is pressured, there's nobody's pressured to make a fight, such as a Crawford and Spence. Everybody is just talking right now. But AJ comes out and says, he makes a negative comment. Fury came out yesterday and said, hey, I smashed you, deal with it, accept it, so on and so forth. And now we have Arum and Hearn running with, trying to kind of sow seed, do some Inception type stuff, in terms of getting Deontay Wilder to step aside so that they can hold the undisputed heavyweight fight. So, like I said, it's not my favorite part of the game, but it's almost like with the whole step aside thing, it's almost like ticket scalpers when you're going to games. Like in some cities, you're not allowed to sell tickets, so they have the signs asking it's the reverse. Do you have any tickets to sell? And then that lets you know that they are selling tickets, and that's how the business can be done. And it's almost like here, Hearn and Arum are kind of like floating the idea out there in hopes that, maybe someone in the Wilder camp will say, hey, well, what's the number? Let's hear the number. Which I don't foresee that happening. But that's just kind of interesting to me. And now you see both sides, Arum and Eddie Hearn. So that's kind of interesting to me. Looking at the trilogy, because there were some thoughts. Like I said, he's talking about bringing in two individuals for Wilder. That is, two individuals to help out with preparations for the trilogy fight. Some talks with George Foreman. And I've watched the rematch a couple of times now. I don't want to be a prisoner in the moment and say that Wilder has no chance, but I definitely wouldn't pick him to win the trilogy fight. And I think it just boils down to pace and space for me. I don't see Wilder really having I don't really see him just having any of the tools to really, and the ring generalship to really maintain, and to fight at a pace. He's an older guy. He's a heavyweight. And he's never really been a volume guy. So he doesn't have that volume going on. And then he's almost been to the point for anybody who could get, apply pressure or be offensive minded against him. He really just has made up his mind to weather all of that and to wait for his 2-second window. And so, like I said, I don't see him controlling space with his feet or body movement. So I still just see him having a puncher's chance. And it's almost like Tiger at that at the one maybe it was Black Page or something years ago, but it was one of the events at one of the tougher golf courses where nobody was really scoring well, and I think he won, but he didn't even pull his driver out of his bag. And similar in this instance, or for this analogy, maybe the goal should be to just avoid throwing. I said this before. Leave that right hand alone until maybe the third round or maybe the fifth or sixth round. And that's another analogy I was going to say was one reason why I wouldn't favor him is because he's behind in the sticks. He's behind the sticks most of the game. And that's not in a boxing reference in terms of fighting behind his jab or the stick, but it's in a football sense that he's just behind schedule the whole fight. Again, waiting for that 2-second window. So what I was gonna say was, maybe leave that right hand alone. Find some way to have a better pace, working with the jab, trying to keep that space, add in some movement, and increase his own physicality and avoid being kind of roughhoused and manhandled more. And like I said, it's a lot of different things, in my opinion, that need to be changed. And I know going into this, you only want to change 1 or 2 things. You don't want to change 4 or 5 things. So it'll be interesting to see who he settles with. He did in the article that I read. He said different people were reaching out to him, and he didn't trust everybody, and so on and so forth. Sounds like a lot of stuff to take into consideration, man, just for a fight. I hope he can figure it out, and kind of get his goals and his keys established very early so that they can just focus on those things throughout camp. One thing, with this surgery, be 100% healthy coming into the fight. And this pushing this out from July, this COVID situation could actually be, a benefit to him. I was looking at, we had the Corrales and Castillo fight, 1 and 2 on last Friday, I believe. And, Corrales came back from that, or they came back from that fight within 5 months. And Goosen was just like, they were trying to capitalize on the momentum of the first fight. It was pay-per-view. He got knocked out, and his career was never the same from that. And so, and that was kind of the circumstances of that fight, and chasing the money and not doing things in an intelligent manner, and taking everything into consideration. And I think here, it's probably a good thing with him fighting 3 times as a heavyweight, as a 34-year-old guy, fighting 3 times in a 10-month span, getting these couple extra months with the fight being pushed back is probably a quote-unquote, I guess, a godsend, if you will. But, again, he's got to do a lot for me to change, how I see that playing out. But, so that's it, man. Bite down, boxer. Don't let them count you out. Pay me no mind. Sports and entertainment. You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great.